Welcome back, my friends, to the sweet spot where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, Howard Holton and Paul Lewis.
Hey there.
Hey, guys.
So I think we have to have had more than 100 episodes, right?
Yep.
Didn't you do a count? What was your count?
Yeah, I think that is close to 100, I think.
Nice.
More.
So after doing that 100 times and doing it the same way every time, how was it last week? As in every week? This is not like every week.
No, that was funny. We practiced on it. I was like, hey, wait. We have someone new. So, yeah. It was difficult to replace Howard. I don't think that's possible.
Well, it is very difficult, in fairness, to just jump into talking like we do. Like, most people actually require some sort of preparation, right? Tell me what the questions are or the general topic. We gave Gowrie, our special guest last week, like 30 minutes. she jumped right in. She actually did very well for not having any of that background, or probably didn't watch a whole bunch of sweet spots to appreciate our actual interaction. So it was impressive for the 30 minutes she got, but I firmly believe that it is very difficult to do what we do.
Yeah, I'm still a little under the weather. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I can hear it in my ears when I speak, and so I have a webinar that's being done along with another person from GigaOM, and he said, hey, do you want to take the lead or do you want me to take the lead? And I said, well, since I'm still under the weather, why don't you take the lead? Mm-hmm. He then emailed back just a few minutes ago, so a couple hours since that email, and said, well, then we're going to need to do a couple of run-throughs so I can get some practice because I wasn't planning on doing that. To which I just replied, never mind, I'll just do it. Like, if I have to run through it, I might as well just do it because it's not really that much more work for me to just do it, and it's far more work for me to do a run through.
And I would argue, and I agree or disagree with me, that the second and third time is worse than the first time.
Yeah,
it always.
Yeah. I never want to do a run through because all those good nuggets happen in the first time.
Yeah, I kind of refuse to answer questions on the dry runs when people do it.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, these are the questions we're going to answer. Okay, cool. I'm good with that. Yeah. Do you mind going through it? Well, it doesn't do you any good. You're going to get a completely different answer the next time. And if this time you probably should just wait.
I'm not going to actually remember what I just said just now. So
not in any way, right? I can't even guarantee that I'm going to answer it. Like, the difference a few days makes sometimes, because we consume so much stuff that there very well may be something that happens in the next 2 days that I consume that gives me a completely different perspective on that particular question. And I'm not saying that as a theoretical, that has actually happened, where they're like, wait, but when you answered that question 2 days ago, yeah, but in the last 2 days, this is what's come up, right? And it has fundamentally changed how I would think about this particular nuance of that question, forcing me to answer it this way.
Right.
It's not exactly in the same way that we were planning, but that actually go and we can use to try to understand when you have an executive, and that's what a question that we had last week. Every executive come with a plan. They start and they do things, what they have in their head. This one I'm going to do within a month or a year or what I have the idea. You just said something very interesting. Something that could happen can switch your plan. So our topic was like the new executive plan, 30, 60, 90. This is part 2 for our audience. So I want you guys to jump right in. What is the actual executive plan in your mind, Howard?
So first I want to thank Pascal for the question. So for those who remember our live the podcast we did with the Netherlands audience, mm-hmm. One member of that audience has since changed roles, and he said, hey, what would you do as a new 30, 60, 90 executive plan? Could you guys do an episode on it? And I went, we've done some kind of things, you come into a new organization stuff, but we've never really kind of gone through that particular question. So I just want to start with a shout out to Pascal, thanking him for the question. So the first thing I try to do is as little as possible. Right.
Interesting.
I think it's really easy to walk into an organization and go, I'm being brought here because of my expertise. I'm being brought here because I know things. I've been brought here because I can do things. And thus, I need to do those things, right? But the reality is all of that is true, but they're also an organization that's been working a certain way for some amount of time, and you have no idea what that is. Right. So the very first thing I like to do is just meet people, introduce myself. Right. The reality is getting to know where the cafeteria is takes a month.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. I think that's what they did in the Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson military movie, where Jack Nicholson's on trial. A Few Good Men. Right. Show me in the manual where the line to the cafeteria begins.
Right.
Well, Kathy, that's not in the manual. What did you do? Well, I just followed everybody else when it was time to go to chow. Right. It's kind of like you need to take some time and do that. And that should really be the very first thing that you do. And make a ton of notes. Just turn it all on listen mode and make a ton of notes. Right. Okay. So we've gone through kind of that. Right. Then you need to determine, do you have the right team? Like, is the team operating in a way that provides the least amount of friction in getting the job done? And the friction that does exist, does that friction exist in the right places? Do they understand how to communicate? Forget about joint mission and all that other stuff, right? Do they even communicate decently? Right? If you're having a one-on-one with a member of your team, and let's say it's your infra team, and they go, we're rolling out this new thing. It's got X, Y, and Z components, and one of those components should trigger a networking conversation. Have they already reached out to the network team? When you talk to the network person, did they say, hey, I was talking to so-and-so, and they're doing this, and we're working with them on that? Right? Or are those things isolated, and the network guy gets to find out 5 minutes before it goes live? Or, 2.5 hours after it goes live? Right? Like, how is that communication? How does that work? And does it work? Right? Those are the kind of notes that I would really be looking for. Were you brought in with a mission, or were you brought in to just take over and maintain the course? Right? What's the change that caused you to bring in, to be brought in, and what got you excited? And is anyone else even aware of it? Right? If you're brought in for digital transformation, when you're doing those one-on-ones, when you're in your listen mode, how many people talk about the corporate digital transformation message or initiative or goal? Mm-hmm. Did they ever bring it up? Right? In which case, did you get sold a bill of goods and there is no actual transformation, as in it's only happening in the boardroom and it doesn't leave the boardroom, in which case it's not really digital transformation? Or are you going to be the only one to introduce and carry DX? Or I guess 3, did everyone hear it and immediately dismiss it because they went, that's not real? Right? Like, those are the things that I would be immediately listening for. And then thinking, okay, so if this is what I'm chartered with, 1, am I set up to succeed or fail? 2, do I have the team necessary to succeed? And does my team work as a team? Mm-hmm. What do you think, Paul?
So I'm going to give myself a B- because I predicted last week that you would be way less prescribed as you currently described it, because Gowrie was going through her process, which was much more of the sort of the creative. I'll see what I need to do when I get there, and you described some fundamental framework conversations. So. So while I don't believe I would define that as prescribed, I certainly would say there's nuance of very specific things you're looking for. I detailed my very prescribed, which is probably not shocking to you, right? So first 30 days for me is, yes, I agree with you. It's all about listening, but it's listening for a purpose. So first listening is, I want to see how the org chart works, the formal org chart. Then I want to see how the informal org chart actually works, because sometimes they're the same, mostly they are not, right? So let's see how that communication chain works.
Yeah, they're never the same, especially intra-team.
the one learning thing I want to do, and you described a little bit with digital transformation, is I really want to know in the first 30 days how the business model actually works, how you really make money, how you really spend money, what net profit means in those circumstances, who are your customers, who are those segments, who are the segments you're currently trying to attract, what your assets are, what is your value proposition. Really, I want to end that 30 days with knowing who's who in the zoo and have that 30-second elevator pitch. If I can master the 30-second elevator pitch of the company, I probably have a good understanding of what the company does. Right? That's first 30 days. Second 30 days you described too. Go ahead.
Like, I would also say you have one opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
You have one opportunity to look with truly fresh eyes on what does the company do, how do they make money, and how do they say they make money, and how do they think they make money.
Right.
Right. It's a really hard thing to do is really take a good inner look at the company itself when you're inside the belly of the beast and go, well, this is who we say we are. This is who we think we are. This is who we really are. Right. This is how we say we make money. This is how we say we'd like to make money. This is really how we make money, where we make money, and who we make money from.
And it's still very surprising how many people in the organization of relatively long tenure who still doesn't understand some of that base knowledge. Right? They didn't know what the market pressures are currently affecting our business model going forward. Well, that's a problem, right? How do you make appropriate current day decisions when you don't know what the market influences might be on how I actually operate?
For sure.
So that's the first 30 days. The second 30 days is much more about current state as you described it. So my output of this in many ways is a SWOT, right? Let me look at the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. Let me look at the key assets. Let me look at all the intellectual property. Let me see what kind of code's there. Let me look at the current infrastructure. Let's look at the current team and the team capabilities, the team skill sets, all those kind of things. And the output of that next 30 days really is a presentation to the senior executives in many ways to say, here are my observations in the first 60 days, good, bad, and different, right? There's always some good stuff, some things that maybe should change, and some things that maybe are keeping us back in some way, making a change. However, I haven't looked forward yet. It's really just current state. And then the next 30 days is much more about what do I need to do to add capabilities to the organization if there's a gap? How do I want to move them into the future? What kind of pioneering effort needs to be put in place? What's the budget to make that happen? What presentation do I need to create to influence changing the budget to make that happen? That's kind of where I spend sort of that 30 days. So at the end of the 90 days, I have a 50-page, 100-page strategy deck for the purpose of going forward. And that's a living document, as you know. I keep that one document as something that encourages us to move forward, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So the only reason that I would move I would flip the first 30 and the second 30 is your second 30 is where I put all the team stuff for you. For me, it's the very first. The very first thing I want to do is make the team feel like I'm here and I'm here for them. So it's what the very first thing I do is that. I would much prefer if the reality is it's very blended, right? But I'd much prefer the output of the first 30 is my team understands that their leader is there for them, that their leader has some clue what the hell is going on, and is happy and willing to listen, and that they come first. The second 30, very much, who are we, what do we do as a company, right?
That's fair. And I think the distinct difference between what I'm saying, what you're saying, is the distinct difference between the CIO and the CTO. I agree with you 100%. If I was a CIO, I'd absolutely have to do that because they're looking for guidance because I might have replaced another CIO. But as a CTO, you have both the engineering side of half of what you do and then the external marketing, sales, evangelism side, which means mastering the elevator pitch becomes a fundamentally important thing because you might have a media interview next week, right?
Sure. It very much depends on the role, right? To your point, right? It's also, greenfield, bluefield, or greenfield, brownfield.
Right.
Are you replacing an existing role? In which case, I think, kind of to your point, right? Immediately start by assuring the team that you're there, of who you are, what you are, why you are, and that you see them as valuable. I left a role recently, as everyone knows, and the guy who took over for me didn't talk to his team for 2 weeks. Started, Didn't talk to a single one of them. He would not let them on his calendar.
Wow.
For 2 weeks.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So that also might play into why that was very top of mind, right? But so what I want is at like the 45-day mark to the 60-day mark, I want my SWOT to be my output. Right? No two ways about it. At the 90-day mark, I really want the straw man of my VSIM, my vision, strategy, execution, and measurement to be my, like, I want to have the first version of that done, right? To really show, like, to give people something that they should be doing. And the first version of your SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Thank you. Concentrate on the S and the W mostly. Right? The OT is fine, but the SW should be really where you spend most of your time for that first version. And then share it with the team. The team should see it before anyone else.
Absolutely.
No one should be surprised by the SWOT. No one should be surprised by the VSIM. And if you do your VSIM by yourself, you're a fool.
Right.
It's like, that should be something you do as a team. It's cool. You might take the first version of it and go, hey guys, here's a VSIM. Don't be shocked if they haven't seen it. And you might go, hey, I just kind of threw together the basics for a straw man. I want to work with you and talk about this. This will be our first workshop we do together as a team. It's okay to go in with some ideas. It's not okay to go, here's your SWOT, and here's your VSIM, and this is what I expect you to execute against for the next 12 to 18 months.
Last week we talked dimensional nuance, and I wondered aloud, and maybe you can respond to this. Is your first 30, 60, 90 different based on size of company? Is it different based on whether this company is 100 years old or 2 years old? Is it different based on size of team or size of budget?
Yeah, I mean, it's different based on what my mission is. It's kind of to your point, right? Do I have an evangelism mission? Am I going to spend most of my time selling, like managing teams internally, or am I going to be spending most of my time selling across the organization? Right? What is my remit as an executive? And remember, this isn't just CXO, but all executives.
Right.
And so, yeah, your remit is going to have a huge play in who you meet, how much time you spend with them, how you decide to organize for action. Right? You may have a remit that is, hey, we've done this thing. We've now got massive change. It's not working. We've seen a downturn in the market. We're looking to do layoffs, which means your organization, your org chart, you might as well tear up the first day. Right? If I went into it knowing I was going to lose 10% of heads, okay, well, I don't have time. I don't have time at all. Right? And now what I really have to figure out is not who to let go. That's not going to be the first thing I figure out. First thing I try to figure out is, what does an operating model look like that makes sense, that does far more with far less? Because if they tell you going into it 10%, nah, that's round one, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because no one's going to listen if they said 30%. If they said 30%, you'd walk away.
Right. In that circumstance, do you accept the request of you, or do you look to see whether you need to re-articulate the value of IT? Right, to say, listen,
re-articulating continuously. Like there's, you should know that from me, right? I'm going to fight against not just headcount loss, but you know, I think we said it 1,000 times, right? We make a promise to every employee we hire. That promise should be kept, and layoffs are the absolute opposite of keeping that promise. So of course I'm going to argue. At the same time, that doesn't mean we can't reorg. Right? That doesn't mean we can't go, okay, well, likely the business isn't getting value from this business unit. Let's take a look at why they feel that way, and how we're organized, and how we communicate, and how we work together. Are we entirely too hierarchical? Are we entirely too bureaucratic? And can we reorg so that we can more align with what our customer, the end user, actually needs, and rapidly start to show some value, rapidly start to show that you know, hierarchy and bureaucracy are not the job, are not the goal, and instead align to better serve our customer. And can we do that quickly?
And it might just be an incentive problem, right? You're incenting red, green, yellow projects, right? You're incenting uptime. You're not incenting value creation, right? So once you start to change the balance of how an individual sees success, then all of a sudden behavior changes, and therefore value is perceived to have been increased, even if the projects are still the same list of projects it was a month ago.
And if it doesn't work, you will also have likely identified the reason it doesn't work. Right. Likely you're going to rapidly identify, oh, hey, here's my 19 problem children, or my 90 problem children, or my entire problem team. Right. And so if it doesn't work, when somebody comes back and says, yeah, I mean, nice try, but we still need you to cut 10%. Okay, I figured out who those are.
So then the big question I asked last week was, well, what do you prefer? What's your dream there? Would you prefer big company, small company, pioneering or operating, big budget, small budget? Like
I mean, big budget pioneering. I don't even understand the question.
Big budget pioneering.
Yeah. I want the least measurable outcome with the largest slush fund possible. Like, it's not even. But no, I prefer pioneering. And pioneering tends to come along with a budget that seems large until you fully accept the remit, in which case I've never been in a pioneering situation where I wasn't underfunded by, like, I probably had 20% of the budget to 40% of the budget that I needed to actually do the job right. That's generally what happens. But I much prefer pioneering. I'm not a business as usual kind of guy. Like, that's not right. If somebody came to me and said, hey, we just lost our CXO, we want you to take over, they had these 12 projects in process, and we really need to see those through to completion before we move on to anything, that's great. Call me when those are completed and you want to do something different. I'm not. Right. That's not me. That's not who I am. Right. I'm much more like, I'm also not one that's going to take we've got to cut heads by 10%. I'm not going to take that job. It's not something that I'm going to do. I will, like, if you're like, we want to get aggressive for cost optimization, you don't have to cut heads, but you have to cut budget by 10%. Okay. I might do that. I'm going to have a ton of questions going into it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to really have by the time it's all said and done, I'm going to have a really good understanding of what the budget is, where they've spent money in the past, what they're doing, what their trajectory looks like, who they service, everything. Like, I'm probably going to walk into it with most of the 30, 60, 90 already done. I will have already met everyone that's going to work for me. I will already have met all the key peers in the business before I accept the job, before I start. So I know I'm not walking into a minefield.
Right.
As in, they've spent the last 30 years of the business funded at 25% of what the IT team should be funded at. So cutting 10% of what's already extremely underfunded, I'm not signing up for that. You've already limped so hard to get to this point. You're asking people to cut their own throat.
One of the most important jobs of your new 90 days is to find where all the brown dollars are.
Yeah.
Right. Because they have a green dollar budget. They want you to reduce that by 10%, but there might be 2 times brown dollars somewhere else in the organization in multiple
It's almost
businesses.
Guaranteed there is.
Right.
Almost guaranteed there is.
So stress not about your 10%, stress way more about finding the other dollars.
Correct. Yeah. Can you find the slush fund?
Right.
How fast can you find the slush fund? It's actually, the other thing I would say is, like, the -30 and the 30, 60, 90 is the time where you really need to be sharpening your partner toolkit. Right? Because you're likely, and it's the easy button is you just deal with the partners you dealt with before. That's by far the easy button, right? Whoever you worked with at the last company, bring to the new company. Okay, cool. Everybody does that. Yeah. But you're going to have new challenges, right? So I'd really, going into a new role, I tend to get more active on LinkedIn, right? I tend to kind of sharpen the pencil on LinkedIn, as it were, and just kind of throw some things out there. Hey, I'm really excited to announce I'm going to start this new thing in a month or so. Hey, just kind of curious where everybody's at. I'm likely to need some help. You know what I mean? And kind of lob a couple of those grenades out, because like, there's some operational companies. There's one called CXO Nexus. We do advertising. That's not the goal here. But effectively, you feed them every bill that's ever been paid for anything technology related globally, and they align that all the way back to the product and tell you, hey, did you know you've spent 7 different ways on this particular product? You probably should align that. Or yes. Hey, triple bought this thing. Or hey, did you know you buy this product from 73 different companies?
Right.
I will tell you right now, you don't buy Dell if you're a large global enterprise, you don't buy Dell from one place. You just don't. Right? That's almost completely unheard of. Right? The question is, how many places do you buy it from? How many places do you think the average enterprise buys their HP printers from, or whoever they use for printers? Right? It's not one,
because they keep switching.
Well, not only do they keep switching, but this office out in BFE buys it from Best Buy because they've got low cost controls, right? The warehouse buys it in Mexico, buys it from whoever they want to buy it from in Mexico because they can. There's just, no matter what we try to do, there's just some things that get missed, right? And when you're looking for those brownfield dollars, that's not what you called it. What did you call them? Just brown dollars?
Brown dollars versus green dollars, yeah.
Brown dollars. Okay. So yeah, when you're looking for the brown dollars, it's a great way to start. Right? Because if you think about it, if you're paying list for things from 7 different ways because you were like, no, my core spend, I don't spend enough to get an ELA. I don't spend enough to do enterprise licensing. All of a sudden, oh wait, we're buying this in 11 different places in the company. Oh well, I definitely qualify for an ELA. Cool, my ELA discount's 34%. I've just saved 34% of what that spend was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like your ability to start leveraging that stuff and immediately turn around and go, okay, cool. Well, in order for me to do this, we're going to consolidate all tech spend. All of that tech spend consolidated now has saved us 27% of our global tech spend.
Right.
And if you're smart, you go, like, you'll find all that, and then you'll come back and go, we saved 4% of our global
That's correct. Hold it back. Hold it back.
It was to save all 27% because they're going to go, great. Can you save 40%? Well, no, I can save 27%. No. I don't think you understand. Save 40%. 27%. I'm not going to believe you that that's all there was. You're now going to cut 40. Right? No. We cut 4% of the required 10% in the first year. Give me a little bit of time. We'll start cutting the rest. It's not a problem.
Everything else in the pocket.
Yep. Right. Like you're playing chess, not checkers. Let's keep that in mind, right? That's one of the things that is required as an executive. You're playing chess, not checkers. And if you have any doubt, look to your peers outside of technology. See how they operate. See how they work. Every single one of them speaks the language. They've been there longer than you. They know exactly what they're doing. They're all playing exactly the same game.
Right.
So last week, Paul, you define your team in a different way than Gary. So I know probably Howard's answer, but how do you define your team, Howard, as an executive?
Your first team. That's the phrase I use. Your first team.
I don't know what you mean. Can you give me your definition, or is it going to give it away?
Or just it will give it away, but I'll give it anyway. You agree or disagree? So, in fact, this was one of the conversations I have with senior directors who move to VP or move to the CIO. I always say the biggest difference between kind of middle management and executive is the biggest difference between who you perceive to be your first team. In a senior director type role, your first team is the people to which report to you, right? It's because you're in charge of very short amount of KPIs and you need 50 people to deliver on that KPI. But as a VP, as an executive, your first team now becomes your peers because you're generally measured now by the organization, not by your particular department or capability. And therefore, my first team are everybody who I work with in order to deliver the joint KPIs for the organization itself. That effectively is the distinct difference between your first teams.
I would say it's an and, not an or, though. For
me.
Like my team is always my team, right? I bring them with me,
right?
But it is an and, not an or. It's and my business peers, right? Because it can't be an or, right? I can't make my team feel like I got promoted, therefore I'm no longer good. I'm too good for them. Right. So it becomes an and, but it also has to be that and, because you are, your MBOs, your KPIs are now much more peer review based.
Mm-hmm.
And your sphere of that contact, your sphere of influence there, and the expectation that goes along with it has also become exponentially larger as you move into an executive role, as you move into an executive seat. Right. It is not expected that that I communicate up and I communicate down, and that's how I communicate. right? It's up to someone else to communicate the larger outward picture. No. At this point, at a VP level, you're communicating out probably more than you're communicating down.
Yep.
Right.
Like and that's kind of what I mean by my first team, right? And that the balance of peer outweighs to the balance of my team, which is my whole 100% transparency, full empowerment kind of thought process there, right?
Yeah.
I have a team that reports to me, to which I now have effective expectations that they will deliver. And I don't plan to be any, I don't have any micro aspect to that because I'm spending 65 to 75% of my time helping my peers deliver on the corporate value, whatever that is.
I would say promotion should be significantly easier than new role.
Right.
Because we've talked about that before too. The very first day of any role, you're looking for your number 2. You're looking for your replacement that day.
Right.
You're not waiting until day 195 when you think, hey, maybe I'm on the promotion train. Very first day. So it should be really, really, really easy if you ever change roles. Okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to another company. Okay, well, what are we going to do? We're going to promote this guy.
Yeah.
Why would I promote that person? You're going to promote this person because I've set them up to. They've been my number 2. I've set them up for the role. They know they've lived inside my head since I gave them that role, and that's the logical choice. I don't even understand the question. Right. Versus who are we gonna put in your place? I don't know. Right. And then if you get promoted within the company, well, they already live inside your head. Your team's already there. They already have all your trust. They're already acting invisibly. So what you said and what I said actually aren't different. It's just thinking about it a different way. You're not changing how you deal with your team. Your team is already level 0, right? They're already.
Is there ever an exception to that rule? And I'm going to throw out an example to you. Is there an exception of the rule where you're pioneering a particular capability or skill set? You have responsibility for 5 skills. You have a team that are focused on 3 of those skills. You are the only one uniquely qualified to do 2 of those skills. Could you possibly grab one of those 3 to do your role immediately?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. In that case, they still come to me for those other skills while they're getting trained.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Like here's the 5 things that we do. I do these 2 things, and no one and you're just not trained to do those yet. Come to me for those 2 things. Right. I mean, I have someone at my former company still comes to me for those things because he just doesn't know how to do them yet.
I think if it's expertise based, 100% agree. Experience based, I think, is much more difficult. In other words, if you had to be on stage for 1,000 hours, I'm less sure it's that easy to.
Yeah, soft skills, hard skills for sure. Soft skills, no. Yeah. So that's a good point. Right. Forgive me, I'm a little foggy from the road. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Like it's there's certain soft skills that you can fake it, but it becomes obvious, right? Like, and yeah, I mean, as an executive, like if you're sitting in the chair today watching this, thinking about, I'd like to be an executive. That paycheck sounds nice. Those responsibilities sound nice. I'd like my vision to be seen.
Right.
I think I have a great vision. I'd really like to be able to execute it. So I want to be an executive. And you're not comfortable on stage, fix that shit today. Start working on that right away. Like join Toastmasters. They're not my favorite organization, but join Toastmasters. Join an improv group.
Yeah.
Right. We started this whole thing with everybody being very nice to me and saying, how hard it is to replace me. But the thing that stood out is how hard it is to be dynamic with no script. We don't rehearse. We don't do show notes. We have nothing. We start with a bare prompt. And the prompt was, what is your 30, 60, 90 executive plan? You have to learn that skill. Say that again.
I think that I have an idea for a workshop for executives.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, look, if you are deathly afraid of presenting to people, if you're deathly afraid of talking to people, if you just don't know where to start, by all means, reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
We are happy to help. And there is no audience that scares us anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. No. And I have to say the personal thing helps me more than the professional thing. Right. First off, I get to do it a lot more, teaching people how to play Dungeons and Dragons, and that was a little tough. I got to tell you, because it was different. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Look. Every time something's different, it can be scary.
Hey, I watched Lord of the Rings yesterday for the first time.
Wow.
Well, I'm sorry, you did what?
I watched Lord of the Rings for the first time yesterday.
Wow.
Like you got a preview to the TV show. You're not just now watching the Lord of the Rings movies by Peter Jackson for the first time.
Actual movie.
Just one of them?
The
Just
first
one.
Wow.
You're gonna have to go.
Then, dude, I got to tell you, there's this thing called Harry Potter that's freaking awesome.
Start with Harry Potter, then you move up.
And in case you didn't know, on the display behind you is our little sweet spot picture. The little green things, those are from the Matrix. You might get a kick out of that one too. No, but you know, I started teaching people how to play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm gonna use this as an example because it's the only one I have that's relatively recent. And I kind of thought, you know, while I've been doing this for a long time, there's nothing about me that's authoritative in the space.
Try asking for a cheap
I don't know what Alexa's thinking. Alexa, stop.
Okay.
Alexa, play Time Warp.
Somebody's messing with me. You know, but I just kind of went, no one's going to want to hear this. Like, I'm going to a geek convention to teach people the 101 of playing Dungeons and Dragons. And the room was full. Right? We've now done it 9 times. We were standing room only. The content hadn't really changed. Like, if you saw us a year ago and you saw us this year, there's not a ton of new content. The game has been out for 50 years or something, right? I've been playing it since I was 11, 10 years old, middle school.
What percentage of the audience were wearing costumes? I just want to visualize it.
Probably 10%.
10%. That's very small. I envision more like
it actually could have been significantly more, but I wouldn't have recognized those costumes, and therefore, you know. But we got amazing reviews from people that came and saw. We had standing room only, right? People were packed in, and they were packed in not because the content was hard to find. They were packed in because we're comfortable, we're confident, and we're fun, right? The stage show was good. The patois, the crowd work, right? We do a lot of crowd work. All of that stuff is learned, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. Right? The ability to walk up on stage and just start talking is a skill that is very, very, very hard. And it is incredibly rare amongst people who are even anywhere near expert. Right? So if you're in a situation where you're like, yeah, what do I have to say? Because the person in the cube next to me knows so much more about this. Yeah, but the person in the cube next to you doesn't know how to be relatable and doesn't know how to stand up on a stage.
Right.
I'm not the authority in anything, but I'll get up on a stage and talk about nearly anything. I got up on stage and talked about blockchain, and I'm not a blockchain expert at all. Rather, I think a lot of what we try to do is simply foolish. And I was asked to speak at this blockchain conference, and I'm like, have you read anything I wrote about blockchain?
Sorry.
You're like, yeah,
not really a fan.
It's local. We'd really like you to speak. We know you speak. Are you okay speaking about it? Sure, but you're probably not going to like what I had to say. So I get up, and there's like 3 of us, right? So the first person goes, and they make their money on blockchain, and the second person goes, and they make their money on blockchain, and then I go, and I'm like, yeah, don't do any of those things. And I'm like, what? Yeah, all those things are stupid. They're going to put money in his pocket. They're going to put money in her pocket. They're stupid. You're not going to make any money with them. You could just use a database for all that stuff.
Right.
What do you really need a third-party data exchange that's slow and cumbersome and risky to do any of that? Right. And then questions from the audience, right? And all 3 of us would reply. And my reply was almost always, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Right. What data are you going to put on the chain and why? Like, what is the driving factor? Well, My company has said we need to do blockchain. Great, invent a cryptocurrency. You do it in a weekend, it'll have no value, but neither will the project you're talking about, and the project you're talking about.
Right.
And what was funny was I expected them to go, yeah, we're really sorry. We don't want you back. They did the opposite. And they went, actually, people really loved what you had to say because everyone else was there because it was neat and shiny. And you were there going, come on, let's add a little practicality to this.
Right.
Right. So sometimes just your perspective is what people are paying for. They're paying for the fact that you went through this experience, that you had this experience, that you have a perspective. They're not paying because you are the worldwide expert at it. They can find that on a TED Talk. They can find that on YouTube. They can find that, don't worry about being the keynote speaker. Just worry about being a speaker.
Right.
Delivering a message. I feel like we got a little off topic there. That didn't really fit in.
It was a good conclusion.
It's funny because last week when we started it was let's try to get 30 minutes. This week we didn't say anything. It was like we're gonna go and to see when we finish. We
This is
don't
what
know.
happens when you skip a week. Howard has it all. It's all pent up.
It's all pent up. That's what the problem is.
So it was awesome to actually get the perspective because it's interesting to see as different executives look at it in different way, but a common theme is how to actually think about the people first and then the company and how to deliver that together. I think that that was my conclusion, but definitely make sure that you take the time to listen to part one and then part two and share your comments. Take the time to probably sit down with your peers and say, hey, does this make sense? Are we doing some of the things that the guys are sharing? And then send us your feedback. So we will see you in our next episode.